You spent, I believe it was 18 years at Little League. I'd love to just kind of get your perspective on the changes you've seen in youth baseball, over the last 10, 20 years.
So the beginning of my career with Little League was compliance. Um, and so while, the role was to offer support to the volunteers running Little League programs, it was also rules and regulations and compliance. Um, and, that's almost counterintuitive to what youth sports should be. But also in Little League, we had that big carrot of the World Series. And we talked about whether or not sort of that the tournament, the rules and the restrictions and the structure that came from tournament, what was negatively impacting that community-based experience. Because you had just your like normal T-ballers and your kids that just wanted to play that were like, well, wait a second, like, why do I have to live here? I just want to play with my friends. As I moved into my role in strategy and program development, our three pillars were access, experience, and retention. So we went back to that access where, okay, we have boundaries and we understand there has to be some structure around these leagues because we have this tournament carrot. But like, how can we make sure more kids who want to play Little League actually have the opportunity and aren't just pushed out because they don't live in a certain area or their community decided not to offer it? So we started to create paths for those kids to be able to participate in Little League. And then experience, that was always the wild card because like I talked about earlier, we have this great program, right? We have the framework, but how it was implemented was really dependent upon the local volunteers that were running the program. And every community was a little bit different. And Little League is a volunteer-based organization. So, you had some people that were more engaged, some people who weren't as engaged. And the experience that child, that family had was impacted only by those people running the program. And then also, during that time, that 20 years, travel sports existed at the start, but certainly the money that people were spending, not just on travel, but on private coaches, and if kids weren't able to get that private coaching immediately getting pushed out. So I think those were some big changes and just money. I mean, the private equity that was being pumped into youth sports at that point, the facilities and what families were looking for.
I would love to understand maybe where you sit on kind of that spectrum, just from a personal viewpoint, because I think a lot of times the answer has been, well, more community volunteer based organizations is good, and I think there's lots of merit there. But as you just kind of said, like the range and quality of those programs can vary wildly based on the individual that's kind of deploying it.
I think it all rests with the minds of parents. Parents now want to control, and understandably, because we've scared them, right? They want to control so much of every experience that their kid has. So it's a little bit fear-based. So when they're thinking of organizations that they want their kids to participate in, they're like, okay, are they doing background checks on the volunteers? Are the people that are going to be around my kid, do they share kind of my same insights, my same mindset? That they want to be able to control the people that their kids are around. Like, it's such a joystick model now, and so parents, when they're looking, I think are looking for organizations that are well funded because they have all of those things. Like, I used to tell this story at Little League. So where I lived in Indianapolis, there was no Little League where I lived. My daughter didn't live in the boundaries of a Little League. There were other youth baseball, softball programs for her to play in, but I was like, you know what? I want her to play Little League and I'm going to go through the normal parent experience. So I looked up the league closest to me and I went on their website, which was defunct. I got on Facebook, which had information from the previous year, and I went through it all. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to just use my resources and like find the league president. So found it, emailed them, asked some questions, 2 weeks for a response. So it was just this really bad experience. And then I went to the organization that was not volunteer run, and I got a response immediately. And I was able to get answers to all of my questions. And so I think that's a little bit of the downside of that, all this investment money that's coming in that's building these amazing facilities. And parents also want that too, right? Like when I went to my local Little League and I had my one daughter playing and my two little kids and I needed to use the bathroom, or one of my toddler needed to use the bathroom, I was like, oh gosh, I got to walk completely across everything through fields to get to the concession stand and the bathroom. Where some of these, better funded programs, you have nice facilities, you have good concessions, the parking is good, the bathrooms are right there. And so as parents are looking for what their return on their investment, that's desirable, that's interesting to them. And so I think they're gravitating towards those other organizations, and people know that. So those is kind of that community experience with your kind of normal Norman Rockwell kind of Little League experience. I think more parents are probably gravitating towards things that are a little more organized and a little more funded, as opposed to the traditional kind of like Little League community based approach. And I can't say that I blame parents for it. I think it really depends on the experience that they're looking for, what they want to get out of it. I think there somehow has to be a balance. I think we have to figure out how, it can be this experience that is still about the kids. That can still be a good experience where they can be safe and it can be organized, but it can also be affordable.